DeLucia. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do here is try to walk you guys through question 2 of exam 2, fall 2013. So just to make sure that you're on the right, you're getting the answer to the right problem you're trying to do. This is exam 2, fall 2013, and it's actually question 2. So here's the question. You can read it yourself to get the real specifics of it, but what we're going to do is we're going to write a loop or nested loops that's going to print out this statement here on the left. So the first thing we want to do before we start coding or write any loops at all, we really want to see what we're trying to print out here. So let's try to look for some patterns in this so that our loops are going to do the right things and run the right number of times, and so pretty much it'll all work. So the first thing I'm noticing is that it's counting down from 6 to 1. And it's making triangles. So that's the first triangle. They're decreasing in size as it does this. So that's the general pattern. Counting down from 6 to 1, making smaller and smaller triangles as it does so. So now for the specific pattern, this 6 triangle is 4 wide and 4 tall. And then this 5 is 3 wide, 3 tall. This 4 is 2 wide, 2 tall. Then 3 is 1 and 1. Then 2 is 1 and 1. And then 1 is 1 and 1. So until 3, there's a pattern of it getting 1 less wide and 1 less tall every time. So the 6 is 4 and 4, the 5 is 3 and 3, the 4 is 2 and 2, the 3 is 1 and 1. And then the 2 and the 1 kind of break the pattern of this getting smaller every time, and are just still there. And so what so let's try to let's just kind of forget about this 2 and this 1 just for now, because what I'm thinking is that there's going to be a condition that's going to make it, we're going to have a loop that's going to make it, how wide and how many times we're going to, how wide is the print line statement going to be, and how many times we're going to run it and making it 1 smaller every time. And that loop will have a pattern to it, but then maybe it's a do while loop, which will only check the condition after it runs once. So even if the condition would say, print 0 2s, because that would be, it prints 2 4s, 1 3, 0 2s. It's not going to check that condition until after it's already ran through the loop once and printed 1 2, and then print -1 1s, which isn't really conceivable, but it won't check that condition until it prints out the first one, and then it won't print out anymore. So let's see what this condition would be to actually print out our desired number. So it's printing out a linear, it's linearly decreasing, 4 3 2 1, and then 1 1. So, but we're forgetting about these, remember. So 4 3 2 1. So it's printing out 4 when the number is 6, 3 when the number is 5, 2 when the number is 4, and 1 when the number is 3. So 6 minus 2 is 4, 5 minus 2 is 3, 4 minus 2 is 2, and 3 minus 2 is 1. And again, we're going to let the do while loop kind of just take care of these. Alright, so that's the pattern I'm feeling comfortable with going with for now. So let's move over in Cloud 9. I copied and pasted what we're trying to print over here. And then I know in the question it said you don't need a public class or a public static void, or a main method, but the fact that I'm actually writing this code, we will need those. So I kind of already put them in there. In the exam, you won't need to write those, but do make sure to read the question, because some of them will require you to write those in. So we need to make 6 triangles. So we need to do something 6 times. And when we do something 6 times, we can use a for loop to do this. As many of you guys have learned, we can kind of just have an integer I, we'll use I for now, count from 0 to 5, and that will make it 6 times. So we'll do this 6 times, count I up from 0 to 5. I is less than 6. And the reason, you could do from 1 to 6, you could do I is equal to 1 and then less than equal to 6. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to do something 6 times, and that's what we're trying to do. I plus plus, I is increased by 1 every time. And this is fine. This would do something 6 times. But something else I'm noticing is that we're going to need an integer that's counting down the whole time. So from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And we could make a separate integer in this loop that's counting down. Or instead of having I count up from 0 towards 6, we could have I start out at 6 and count down. So we're subtracting 1 from I every time now until I is 1. And since it's not going to get to 0, we need I to be greater than 0. So that's now going to count us down. It's still going to do something 6 times, but it's also going to give us this I integer, which is starting at 6 and getting decreased by 1 every time. And we can use that in other places within our code. So that's going to do something 6 times. But as I said before, we're going to try to use these do-while loops kind of to help us out here at the end when our pattern breaks down. We need to do it once, even though our condition would suggest that it shouldn't. Our condition, again, being this 6, which is now I, so this I minus 2. So we're going to write a do-while loop. So do, and this loop is going to define, so this is every triangle. This first do-while loop, and there will be 2, this first do-while loop is going to print out a single triangle. So let's put that in a comment line so we remember this, single triangle. And it's going to do this by printing out single lines. So in the second do-while loop, it's going to print out a single line. And this single line is going to do that by printing out a single, well, in this it's going to print something. In this case, it's going to be a single number, this number I, which is 6 the first time, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's write this, system.out.print. Now, there's between print and print line. They're both going to print something out, but print is going to print this, whatever it wants to print. In this case, it's going to be the single integer on the same line as before. It's not going to enter into a new line. So print this I character. Well, it's not actually going to be a character I. It's going to be the integer defined by variable I. So print out this I. So now we need to kind of, these do, first of all, they're do while, so we need to add in while statements down here. And we'll add in conditions in just a bit. Don't forget the semicolons after the whiles. That's an easy mistake to make. But so let's try to then make these conditions and make sure that each loop is running the correct number of times. So since it's not a for loop, we can't just kind of write all the conditions inside these nice, neat little brackets. We need to actually define them outside of it. So this first loop, this loop, this do while loop right there, you could it's going to be defined by this j term. J equals not equals j. So that's this int j is going to start out equaling 0. And it's going to be, I'm going to have it be, it needs to do this a certain number of times. So we're going to have it start out at 0, and it's going to count up each time, j++. And so this loop, which is defined by j, integer j, is needed to run I minus 2 times. So j is starting at 0, so j needs to be less than I minus 2. So this loop is going to run 4 times the first time we go through this for loop. So this first do while loop is going to run 4 times the first time we run through this for loop. So that's this 4 deep, this 4 tall triangle. We haven't touched how wide the triangle is yet. And then it's going to run 3 times the second time. So these 3 5s when I is 5, 2 4s when I is 4, 1 3 when I is equal to 3, and then when I is 2, j is going to be equal to 0, I is going to be equal to 2, 2 minus 2 is 0, 0 is not less than 0. So don't we need to change something? Well, no, we don't. Because the do while loop, it's going to execute this loop once before checking this condition. And actually, j is not even going to be 0 anymore by the time it gets here. J is going to be increased by 1, and 1 is not less than 0. 1 is more than 0. But it's going to, regardless, it's going to execute the code within this loop before it checks the condition, which is really helpful when we get down to these last 2 terms. So now we need to write the conditions for this inner do while loop. This inner do while loop we're gonna define with the integer k, k is equal to 0. And we're going to increase k just like the last time, k plus plus, just like j. So what does k need to be less than? It needs to run a certain number of times. It needs to run 4 times, then 3 times, then 2 times, then 1 time. Then 3, 2, 1, then 2, 1, then 1. Again, we're going to kind of use the do statements, the do-ness of this do while loop to make sure it's going to run once for these last two. But for these first ones, what's the condition going to be? Well, it needs to be this I term minus 2, but then it needs to subtract by 1. So I minus 2, then I minus 3, then I minus 4, then I minus 5 every time it goes through this loop. So we're going to define this second integer z, which is going to be equal to I in the beginning before it ever. So z is going to be redefined as I every time it runs through this for loop. And then it's going to go into this loop, and z is going to be decreased by 1 every time it runs through this do while loop. So z is going to be equal to I the first time it enters this one, and then z is going to be equal to I minus 1 the second time it enters this one, and then I minus 2, and so forth. So then this while statement is going to be very similar to this one, except instead of I, we'll have z, and z is going to be changing every time we kind of do this. So k is going to be less than this z term minus 2. And that's important. So this, again, I'll just kind of re-explain this. This is kind of the challenging part of this. This z term is at first going to be equivalent to I, which is why it's going to be 4 wide, the same as this inner loop is running a 4 tall. But then it's going to decrease by 1 the second time to make it only 3 wide, and then so on and so forth until it gets down to just 1. And then it's going to start over. One last thing we need to do, and that's that it's going to, it's printing out these i's, but there's one last thing, and that's that we need it to also make a new line after every time it prints out these kind of this string of i's. Now, string's kind of the wrong word because it's another job term, but these multiple terms of I. So we're going to make a system.out. This time, instead of a print statement, it's going to be a print line statement. It's going to be an empty print line statement, so we're not actually going to print anything. But we do need it to make a new line so that after we print out these 4 6s, after it runs through this the first time, prints out 4 6s, then it's going to hit this statement, enter a new line, repeat. Except this time it's going to print out 3, new line, repeat, done, done. All right, so let's go ahead and recompile this. So first let's save our work in our new terminal. We'll go to this extra credit folder I put it in. See the extra credit. Make sure our nested loops.java is there, and then let's compile it using this java c command. So this nested loops.java works. Let's see if it runs. And moment of truth. Alrighty, so we printed out something that looks nice and similar. So it's got 4 6s, 4 tall, 3 5s, 3 tall, 2 4s, 2 tall, 1 3, 1 2, 1 1, 4 6s, 3 5s, 3 4, and 2 2 1 1 1. It's looking nice and the same. So that's how you do question 2 of exam 2, fall 2013. Good luck with the rest of your studies.